Hey, hello everyone. Welcome back to Energy Unleashed with Suzanne and Kim. And it is our first time we have a live guest. We're so excited and thrilled to have our soul sister. This is Gisele Bonenfant, and she is our really good, I think, and dear friend of ours. We do a lot of energy work together that we're going to get in on. But thank you for coming, Gisele. You truly are the first time Kim and I have had somebody else on. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. Thank you
Yeah.
for letting me be your first time.
That sounds a little interesting, doesn't it? We're gonna unleash you, Gisele. Hi Kimmy, how you doing there?
Doing great. Hello,
Good.
everybody. And hello,
Yeah.
Giselle. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
So fun to see you.
And she's our dear friend that is in Sedona. And Kim and I, gosh, Kim, we haven't been there in almost a year.
Mhm.
So we've got to get our little booties down there very soon. And when we are there with Gisele, usually we fly and hang out with my sisters, but we scoot right down to Sedona so that we can hang out with her and another friend or two. And Gisele is what we would call a crystal bed facilitator. And I'm going to just kind of throw it at you at the very beginning and let you do a brief explanation of what that truly means, because I don't know if people even know what a crystal bed is, much less a crystal bed facilitator, and what that kind of is. And then we're going to kind of go from there. If you could sort of begin with that, I think that would be helpful for folks.
Sure. The official name of this unit is the Vogel Photonic Triangulation Unit. This was created by students of Marcel Vogel. If anyone knows of Marcel Vogel, he worked for IBM for 20 or 30 years and has over 100 patents to his name, but he found a way, I'm sorry, I don't have one with me, but he found a way to hand facet a crystal to maximize its potentiality. So if a crystal is in its natural state, we would say the field is random. So the crystal is hand faceted, all based on sacred geometry, the same lines as the Pyramid of Giza. He knew he had the cut right because he had a lab. He didn't intend to work with crystals, but he was able to measure the frequency of the crystal. It took him about a year to do that. So the premise, in a nutshell, the premise is utilizing Vogel crystals, passing light through the crystals at different rates of speed based on hertz. And depending upon the rate of speed that you pass the light through the crystal, it will generate a certain field, which then elicits a response to the energetic field of the body.
Yeah.
So it does a great job of clearing out the energetic field, but as you both know, you've both experienced it. Um, Many things can happen. I did incorporate sound with this, so it also utilizes a vibroacoustic sound table. So to me, this is a 21st century version of what the ancients have always known, and
Yeah.
bringing the body, all bodies, all subtle bodies, into balance with crystals, color, light, and sound. And I could go on and on and on, but that's it in a nutshell. So I've been working with this for 20 years or so.
And to let them understand a little bit further, you basically are laying on a massage table, a bed, and then that apparatus is up and over you, and the lights are pulsing different frequencies. And for me, being more of a galactic body, I love the crystal bed. It makes me so excited because it's a very electric experience for me. Um, and it really raises my frequency really quickly, and I love it. Kim, you really enjoy this as well, right? I mean, you love the crystal bed.
I love the crystal bed. So I was going to say, it doesn't matter if you're galactic or not. I think that it really works with your whole aura and chakras and the energy that is in there. And so I find whenever I do a session with Giselle, there's just so many things that I'm able to identify with her and
Mhm.
release, and or things to consider or take and work on when I go through the sessions, because she's also super intuitive and hearing and understanding things about you as you go through that process. There's a connection there that is really amazing. I just love it.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. But in something, keep in mind that if I didn't, these were the unit that I work with is a prototype. It never really went into production. To my knowledge, there were only 12 or so that
Hmm.
were made. I was able to locate two others, but to my knowledge, this is the only one still in working conditions, say. The
Hmm.
technology is getting a little bit old. So there are other quote unquote crystal beds out there, but I say this with all humility. This unit that I work with is really, I would say, an original or the forerunner of what we see out there today. There
Hmm.
is a difference, obviously, with the types of crystals that are in these beds, how the lights are pulsing. Um, among other things. But I don't know if I ever shared this with you, and this was when I was in Egypt in 2006, and I had only had the crystal bed for, I don't know, maybe a year or so. Um, and there were people who had gone out on the Giza Plateau. They weren't in our group, but they came back with a short channeling. And may I read it to you?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's just a couple of it's just a few sentences. But I keep in mind I didn't know these people. They didn't know that I was working with a crystal bed, and they just came back with this information. And once I told them what I had been working with, they gave me permission to use this. This was on Sunday, March 19th, 2006. I was in Egypt during an eclipse. It was a solar eclipse, which is fascinating. This was channeled by James Stewart. The location for the creation of formula for ascension is 45 feet from this location in the west direction, meaning where he was standing on the Giza Plateau, it was 45 feet to the west. 32 feet in depth is the device used for genetic manipulation. The device resembles a table embedded in quartz crystals, which maps the outline of the body. Here, the people are laid to rest, and crystals are aligned along the chakra points. This shifts the vibration and allows the body to shift to a higher vibration, then possible, dot, 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 genetic code, dot, 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 shape shift for ascension through the stargates. We called it the crystal bed.
Holy cow.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, anyway, I thought that just might interest. Yeah. So as I say, ancient technology,
Right.
very old. And
That's super cool. And
yeah,
basically, maybe tell the audience how long you have been doing crystal bed work.
you know me in linear time.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, let's see, 2006, and I already had it.
yeah,
So it's a good solid 20 years.
sure.
Maybe I had it's probably just about 20 years. I'd
Right.
probably had it a year by the time I went to Egypt. I don't fully recall.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I love this piece of you, but this particular episode that we're talking about, I want to concentrate on the session that I did with you. Now, I have worked with Gisele over the years, and we've worked on each other. I go see her when I'm in Sedona. She does a lot of remote work with me, etc. And I would like to really kind of, like we say, unleash the story of the last session. But before we do that, it's going to be really difficult to just fly into the session without giving a little bit of the kind of like a snapshot of your life because this had a lot to do with the session. So maybe if you could just go back to the beginning of your story. I mean, we don't have to have, every single solitary detail, but kind of like the crux of the concept of especially that you were born on a military base and where we go from there with your health issue because what I want to set up is why this is important is because all of this came through in the actual healing session. And I don't believe we were specifically in that session intenting to go back into any of that. And so it came like like I mean, it just blew up. This session just blew up into a whole lot of other things. But I think it's important to give them some reference, frame of reference of birth, and especially the sickness at the beginning. If we could just kind of capsulize that, would that be fine?
Sure. Um, I was born at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Fort Bragg was then and still is today the Center for Psychological Warfare for the U.S. military. My father was not full-time military. He was recalled to active duty for the Cuban Missile Crisis, I believe. So just long enough for us to be there, my mother to be pregnant with me. It was a difficult pregnancy. She was put on bed rest. I'm the youngest of five. It took me 5 days to be born. That had been so long since the water had broken, they just decided to put irrigation tubes up her, which is a practice that would not be done today. And then there was the birth. There are a few things, anyway, I'll leave out. So it was a traumatic birth. My mother doesn't understand how she got pregnant with me to begin with. She said there was no business her getting pregnant with me. I don't, for what it, anyway, you get what I mean, right? During the, yeah, we'll leave it at that. And from there were challenges from birth. In the first 3 years of my life, I was in and out of the hospital, which led to exploratory surgery at the age of 1, the removal of the left kidney at around the age of 2, and at the age of 3, the removal of a tumor that they say the body will try to fill in the cavity. By that time, they were basically don't expect her to come out of it. That's it in a nutshell. Is that enough detail or too much?
No, I mean, whatever you're comfortable with. And again, this is a lot of vulnerable stuff, personal stuff, and we really appreciate you going into it because I think it really puts contents to the story. Yeah, so for me, then I'm going to let Kim jump in here and ask whatever too. But for me, in the work that I do, it's really critical that babies come in when they're supposed to. And to have a 5 day stranded kind of period is a very, in my opinion, taxing on your soul contract. Our soul's contract, in my opinion, again, you can take it or leave it, but for me, soul's contract for when they come into their entry date and when we leave. And when we have an entry date of X, Y, or Z, and then we are basically kind of in limbo for that 5 day period with really, really traumatic stuff, that puts a whole different spin on my entry of why I'm here and what that does to my soul contract. And I know that you do a lot of that work and have over the years. And this is sort of what unearthed itself during this particular session that we're going to break out a little after I let Kim jump in here. But yeah, it was to me very apparent that Fort Bragg right out of the gate was really, I'm just going to say it was icky. As it's such a Minnesota word. It was just so icky when I looked online. I know nothing about Fort Bragg. I had to look it up and Google it. And when we were working, I brought up images of it and just the eerie feeling and my empathic feeling of oof, I don't know, this place is icky. And then when we chatted again afterwards, that's when you informed me that yes, definitely they were involved in mind control, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But it was not a pleasant, let's say, landing, right? I mean, it wasn't a pleasant coming in.
No, and given that, though, the 5 days brought me to be born on a Friday the 13th.
Oh, gads.
The Friday, the 13th, my understanding, to be born on a Friday the 13th has some significance to the Maya. I've been told. I don't specifically know what that is, but for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's not necessarily a bad thing to,
No, not at all. I
well,
don't view
yeah,
it. No, I view that as a blessing.
yeah,
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 yeah.
I agree with that. But so being this whole like the military whole setup, like at Fort Bragg, I know there's just so much that goes on there. It is like gosh, it is, there's just, I don't, we're not going to go into all of that in this session, but the whole piece of that that's interesting is the psychological warfare. And so as we go through your story and what comes out of this, I think that's going to be very interesting in that the things that they were doing, especially with military families and their children and different things as they went through and tried to find ways, psychologically to manipulate and get people to do things for them that were not great. They're not good.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious about this as we go through, the story for you.
Yeah, the original, I've been fascinated with mind control my whole life, and it really didn't dawn on me until actually, even though I knew it always in the back of my head, but um, I don't know. It was, I was looking at Fort Bragg myself, and it
Mhm.
was like, oh, it's a center of psychological warfare. Gee, maybe that's why I've always had such an interest in mind control. And from, I don't know how for how long, it fascinates me because we're all influenced by it
Mhm.
at some level, but it was in my field from in utero.
Mhm.
So of course, it makes absolute sense that I would have an interest in it.
And so if I can clear up the fact that you had an interest in it, but it doesn't, you have at this point in time, in your childhood and in your young adulthood, you don't have any actual memories of saying, gosh, they did this, or I learned this, or they took me anywhere. This wasn't coming into the session that we did, that wasn't a part of your life. So if we can just take a really fast ride through Gisele's life going, okay, yeah, I grew up there, but it wasn't like I was, part of that psychological warfare. So my life getting into spiritualism or getting into crystal bed work or getting into all of that, and we oftentimes call you the earth shaman for our group. You're very earth connected, very, indigenous connected, etc. So where does that shamanism and all that stuff start to come into play?
Really, wow, really good question, Suzanne. I need a second to actually think about that. It it actually came into play from a very early age. Wow. I remember sitting in the living room with my mother, and I was in grade school. I'm trying to remember this, and in saying that there were three things that I had wished. I wished that I was born on my father's birthday. He was July 8th, and I was the 15th. Is that 5 days?
13th is
Yep.
5 days. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's 5 days. That's
Yeah.
interesting. That's interesting. And the second thing was that I had wished I was born indigenous. I
Yeah.
wish that I was born native, and I honestly can't remember the third thing.
Okay.
So where did it come in? It came in uh, from a very early age. I was
Okay.
probably in, fifth, sixth, or seventh grade if I go back to that.
Yeah.
So it's been there a long time. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when
Mm-hmm.
I met you, I thought you were indigenous. Like, I really thought that your bloodline, was Native American. And it's how you are in your body and like your connection, I think, to all things, around you. I just was sure you were. I don't know why, but
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no, I love Indigenous people and the way of life. And to be honest, I really thought that when I came here to Sedona that there would be an opportunity to work with them. And I won't say that there hasn't been, but it hasn't been in the way that I thought it would be. Um, so yeah, it's been interesting.
Well, and then eventually in Sedona, you eventually meet a gentleman that we don't even need to use his name, and it is important to just note that this gentleman was a pretty big piece of your life with the indigenous flair to it. And we don't have to go into a whole lot of the relationship with him because that's your own private business, obviously. But this person came and went and came and went and came and went often throughout your life. Is there anything that you can sort of recap or highlight and the oddities of how this person always showed up at synchronistic times?
It's like it's mm, I don't even know how to explain it, Suzanne, after all this time.
Yeah.
It's almost like I would think, that's it. That's it. There's no reason for us to ever reconnect, or there would be no reason for him to contact me again. But it would always come back around. It would always come back around. And a deep, um, you've just known this person before. It's like, oh, I know you. So at that level, at the soul level, you're like, oh, I know you. I've known you forever. You know what I mean? So it's almost like when they come back around, you're like, oh, yeah, there you are again.
Hmm.
But yes, it's interesting. And in the in-between times, you get to process, and you get to process things, and I'll leave it at that. And it's very, very clear in your mind. You're very, very clear in your mind about the relationship with this person. And as soon as that person shows up again, it all starts up again. It doesn't
Right.
matter how clear it was in your mind in the in-between, let's say. As soon as they show up, it's another spin. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Does that make sense to you, Kim? Because I was in the session, so
Yeah, I feel like so did it get chaotic? Did it get like unsettling? Did it like just like what was that like? I don't think I know what like when he would come back in.
Deep,
What was that like for you?
the whole thing deeply, deeply unsettling. Deeply heartbreaking. I
Mm,
mean, just heartbreaking because there is such a deep connection with this person, but you can't there's like this disconnect, this major disconnect. Like how can that be happening in this realm? You could call it karma, you could call it life lessons, I'm very grateful.
mhm,
Um, it there is a connection with my father into for sure. I could make a list. I don't feel I won't here, but very much the being emotionally unavailable,
mm.
or the list goes on and on. But it's
so what
so
you're, can I jump in? So what you're
yeah.
saying, so I can clarify what you just kind of skated over is what you're saying is the character, the personality characteristics of the two men were very similar. So even though this particular younger man was very attractive to you in terms of feeling like there was karma, there was past life, there's potentially soulmate, there was all these really strong bonds. At the same time, there was very difficult characteristics being played out that were showing over and over and over again, and not a great way of your father energies. Correct?
Mm.
Yes, thank you for making that so clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just want to
Thank you.
make sure everyone's staying on track here.
No, I appreciate it,
Yeah.
Suzanne.
And
It's
since I knew you, we had worked actually before on different sessions throughout the years on this particular younger gentleman in terms of breaking those bonds, cutting those cords, being able to walk away from that so-called past life connection so that this haunting feeling of always coming back didn't, take you to your knees like it did. And it was so odd because we had done several of those and we're both really pretty darn great at our work, and it never seemed to work until this particular session, and we're going to get into why. But I think that that's a super interesting element to this. Before we move into that piece, I want to even have you say how odd it was that you'd be in the middle of like nowhere where this person would even normally be, and boom, he'd show up. I mean, it was just like you'd look across the street and you're like, what are you doing here? Where it made no sense. That happened quite often, correct?
correct.
Yeah. I'm just trying to point out the oddities because it's going to make sense when we start to get into the session work because I always heard the oddities and yet nothing made sense until this particular session. So,
And no,
yeah,
and
yeah, go ahead.
feel free to explain because, like I said earlier, it's not the easiest thing for me to talk about. This is a stretch for me.
Yeah,
So, and I love you both and trust you both implicitly, which is, why we're doing this. And it's not only for me, but it's it's for anyone or it's for everyone. And
exactly.
this is why. So if there is, so please feel free to clarify anything that you know that I'm trying to say that I'm just not getting out.
It's okay. all right. Okay, so we're going to jump into. So this is this particular man. She's got the father issues. We've got the military stuff, but nothing ever connected. We jumped into spiritual paths. You've been very, very successful in a lot of the past. But before we go full into unleashing the session, I also would ask you to be, if you choose, to be humble enough to say how much you have limited yourself with your gifts over the years because of not trusting yourself enough, having other people's version of who you are being limited. Can we
Mm.
jump into that just a smidge?
Um, yeah, are you asking me for like a percentage? If you look close, if you play back the video, you'll see that there was an actual physical reaction to that question.
Yeah.
Um, extensively, probably extensively. I want 80% is what's coming to mind.
Okay.
80% is the number that goes through my head. So maybe I was showing up at 20% of capabilities. Does that make sense?
That's fair. Kim,
Mhm.
you got anything
And
to jump in on?
and feel free to offer your own opinions too. I won't be offended. If you go, well, Gisele, it was really five. It's I won't I won't be offended or take it personally, you know?
No, it
No,
wasn't.
I think it is so brave of you to be here and be vulnerable to talk about these things so that others may learn from it. So, um, talking about, not the percentage of not showing up, um, I think as people go on their spiritual journey, that vulnerability is really difficult to overcome and to trust yourself and trust others, with what you have. I could see the background that you just gave, how it's really difficult to, it's almost kind of like hiding out a little bit. Like you don't want to be as visible because the visibility brings all kinds of other potential difficult situations and relationships and heartache. I would guess that that is really, I understand that part of it is you're really putting yourself out there. When you say going to 100%, there's a lot that goes with that, you know.
Yeah.
So
No. And I agree with you, Kim. It's certainly not wanting to be seen.
yeah.
It's very, very uncomfortable for me.
Mhm.
Really, I incredibly uncomfortable.
And
But
again, we thank you for even doing this because it's so important for people to hear that others are uncomfortable because we all think that we're alone in that. And regardless how gregarious we may seem on the outside, there may be a really, really difficult thing happening as far as, holding our head up and opening that throat chakra and being able to be seen and heard, et cetera, et cetera. But especially when we have a recurring relationship that takes us down again. And it wasn't that this person was abusive. It wasn't any of that. It was just mind kind of screwy stuff that wasn't, and the reason why I'm bringing this forward, the mind screw wasn't at the surface. It was a manipulation underneath that wasn't even available or even known until this session, which is years and years and years and years of being with this person back and forth and back and forth and on and off. And I bring this forward to other people listening and clients of mine too. And I've used you as an example because we limit ourselves a lot from belief systems, and we can't change belief systems sometimes because sometimes there's more than just the belief system going on. It is the programming, it's the manipulation, it's others. And so this is tough stuff, and I applaud you. You're working through some really big, that's a big year for you. This is a big year, so it's big.
Mhm.
Right? All right, I'm going to jump in. So, when I first did the session, we were remote because you were in Sedona. And when I do remote work, I'm a full body telepath and empath. And I just basically go dark on the Zoom call. And Gisele goes and relaxes. And I go in. And with this kind of a friend, especially, I go and really do details in terms of video recording, audio recording. I mean, notes, et cetera, et cetera. But I vividly remember the very first scene when I tapped into you telepathically in this was you were completely bound And this wasn't the intention. So it threw me off because most of the time when I have a client session, we have intention clarified. Therefore, I go into the work with the intention, and the first entry into the work usually makes sense with the intention. Ours was kind of open ended, and this kind of stunned me in that you literally look like you were bound to a chair. Your hands were wrapped, your legs were wrapped, everything was wrapped, and your throat was totally compromised. Again, not being seen, not being heard, but we still didn't have like a feeling of what was going on yet because it was the very entree into the session. And to make a really long, convoluted story short, I felt after I looked at Fort Bragg that a lot more happened to you. And I'm making my own. We're still working this out as friends and as clients and practitioners, etc., because we're not quite sure either. It's still evolving and unfolding. But what I was starting to see is that there was something quite nefarious going on from the beginning, and that your actual birth situation with all of the surgeries and all of the trauma, I mean, the cellular trauma that your little tiny body and held on to for the first 3 years of your life must just have been so unbelievable. And I was asking eventually, did this happen to protect you in any way, shape, or form, or did this happen to hurt you? Were you being hijacked? Were you having, off-planet things happening to you? Were you, because you don't have a lot of memories in a lot of these spaces and places. And I was asking, were you hijacked? Were you taken on ship? Were you, alien attacked? What the heck was going on? And why did all this happen to this little child? And why does the mom have such a distance from everything as well? And what I started to conclude was that there was possibly a reason from a soul's contract there's two ways to look at this. We could look at the difficulties of your child, first 1, 2, and 3 years, as a protection mechanism from off-planet beings, that we hurt the body and have really difficult trauma in the body because it actually takes me out of the mainstream. And this is going to sound weird to somebody listening at the beginning here. It takes Gisele out of the mainstream. And I said, well, that seems silly. Why would she taken out of the mainstream? And they said, because of the fact that she was in the confines of the MK Ultra programming. And MK Ultra, for people, I'm just going to clarify what that is. And that's kind of a big umbrella word that a lot of people use, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. Basically, it's the research that the CIA did during the 1950s and 60s. And I would assume that Fort Bragg was part of this place because the research was all about mind control. And you said this was really what was apparent there. This was about interrogation. This was about behavior modification. This was about taking over people and really practicing to see what we could do with the human brain. This was created after the Cold War because a lot of different things were happening across our globe, and people were weaponizing not only people, but sound frequencies, all kinds of things. And everybody's governments, including our CIA, was doing a lot of psychological testing to see what we could get a jump up on. And these were the difficult times of using psychedelic drugs, mostly LSD. There's movies made about this. There's documentaries about this. This is nothing really new, unless you don't study it. But this is hypnosis. It's sensory deprivation. It is shock therapy. It is constant mind-boggling things for this. And I had this feeling that there could have been a benevolent intervention because you were so closely embedded into this MK Ultra thing, and you were a psychic child. You were a psychic sensitive. You were an empath. You would have been a perfect candidate for this. And during this session, you and I have been talking quite extensively for weeks now because we did this in July. That quite possibly this was a benevolent intervention to kind of not break your body down, but sort of, so that it wasn't up to speed to be able to be a great candidate. Does that make some sense?
Yes, it makes absolute sense. And I can interject when it's
Yep.
appropriate.
No, go ahead. And Kim, you too, because this is a lot new for Kim, because I always don't tell Kim everything so that she can react like the listeners. So go for it.
With respect to the benevolence, I relied heavily on my dreams my whole life, but I don't typically have recurring dreams. The only recurring dream I ever had was when I was in the hospital. And people say, no, you don't have memories at 2 or 3 years old. Trust me, you do. And I'm
Yep.
sure that there are plenty of people who will listen to this who can confirm that. Anyway, the recurring dream was that a door, I'd be in a room by myself. I'm guessing ICU right outside of the nurses station. Um, and a door would open in the wall. You're talking, this is 1963, 4, and 5. Men in black are not a known thing yet to the population, let's say.
Right.
Door would open and 3 men in black would come in. Typical black hat, black suit, black tie, white shirt. And also, I would say if you know what a World War II mine looks like, or actually what the coronavirus kind of looks like, it was a big metal thing and it had spikes in it, and that would also come in the room with them. But that device, say, had consciousness. And these were my friends. So uh, this is where the benevolence comes in. And I was not afraid. They were my friends. And it was for years. It wasn't until in my 40s when I took a 2-year shamanic practice course to help me understand about the crystal bed. And one of the journeys was because I never knew what that meant. Who were these beings? And my mother was always like, but you didn't even know what a World War II mine looked like, or you didn't, who, you get what I mean? This wasn't out in the culture. So I was 2 and 3. I wasn't.
Right.
And I asked about that dream. We were asked to journey to a recurring dream, and that was the only recurring dream I ever had. So I asked what that was. And when I asked who those men in black were, the only information that I got was that they were keepers of the light, that I was the light. I say this with all humility because we're all light, but that they were keepers of the light. And with respect to the device, that thing, the only information that I got about that was your consciousness can't understand that at this time, but when you will see it again one day and you will know what it is.
Hmm.
So I say that with respect to the benevolence, there was for sure.
That's awesome.
So
Right.
were there, did you, so that, I mean, that, I didn't realize when I think of Men in Black, I always think of kind of government and that they were part of, but to be benevolent, that is just fascinating to me. But did you have any other people coming in that seemed non-authentic and not your friends? You know,
No, none that I recall. All my experience were, any experience, no, I only have, um, good memories of nurses and doctors and being well taken care of. I don't have memories of being supported by family, meaning not that my mother had 4 other children at home to take care of, but there was, let's just say, space or a gap there. Um, but no, really good question. No.
yeah, that's really interesting to me, especially when you're, at Fort Bragg, that there wasn't more.
No, these we were out of Fort Bragg by
Oh, were
then.
you? Okay.
Yes, good,
Okay.
good. Thank you for saying that. No, this was in New Hampshire. So
Okay.
I was just kind of there long enough to be born, and with a matter of months of being born, we left Fort Bragg.
That
It-
is because now
yeah,
you're definitely out of sight and you're not part of, that whole potential the MK Ultra stuff. So that's with your health issues and all of the things to be taken away from that. That makes so much sense to me now. Um, I just
and
wasn't sure if you're in the same place and you had,
oh, no, really good question. Thank you for asking that. And I don't know, maybe Suzanne would, tap into those beings, far better. That's the only information I ever got of them.
I know that a lot of people have the tendency to think that they're government because of the movies, mostly, Kim,
yeah,
in
great.
terms of, Men in Black. And I know that there are also nefarious dark men in black as well. And that can be very difficult because even in the spirit world or the paranormal world, there's a lot of men in black also. So these are phenomenons that I don't think are this or that. I think they're this and that, I think that there's all kinds of different things, but I do be able to relate to Gisele being a small, small child and knowing innately inside of your being that they are your helpers and not having fear, which I think is so beautiful about a child that has not been grabbed or programmed or changed or parented in the regard of fear, because your body just knows that they're your helpers. And I think that that's awesome. But I love the fact that you got all of a sudden grabbed away also and then get out of Dodge. I mean, it's kind of interesting, right?
Well, how does so learning this piece, Gisele, is like that is a major thing to come out of this session. Like as you're like getting your head wrapped around this and I mean, your emotional part of you involved in this, are you, do you feel differently about being sick as a child? Do you feel differently about um like that wasn't a weakness, but it was something that was needed to be done? Like I would think it would impact your perception of all of it.
Yeah, and I think yeah, there's still other stuff here that, again, where this is why we're here, we're unpacking and learning. But I think, I remember Suzanne also saying the the, the kidney issues were very specific. The creation, let's say the creation of the illness was it was designed for a specific reason. So, Suzanne, do you remember talking about the kidneys and holding fear?
Yeah, fear and also water. And I thought that that was super interesting too. And a lot of it is that Gisele holds a very, very high frequency of almost like what we would call Essene energy or mother goddess, God energy. And that is all very much water related. And so the actual organ itself that it was working with had a lot to do with her soul's frequency. So it isn't like if that's your soul's frequency that directly relates to those organs, it isn't like they, took out your left lung. I mean, it was specific to the soul's mission on planet in a human body. So it, to me as a practitioner, that always amazes me because the soul knows exactly what it's doing. And this is our playground. This is our, and sometimes the play isn't so fun, right? I mean, it's not fun having all of that happen all of those years, but it also is about fear and how we use fear and how we can be programmed in fear. So if you were a small, small child and did not get tossed into the MK Ultra program because the benevolence tweaked your physicality, it doesn't mean that they weren't monitoring you, because it is a fear-based organ as well. So now let's move forward a little bit. So yeah, we get through that time period. We don't even know about it until now. We're examining and unleashing all of that. But now you can look back at your life and start to say, holy crap, I have been feeling watched or feeling, whatever, maneuvered or kind of like led in this way and that way, all fear based throughout my life. And so again, the organ is very specific. Does that make sense to everybody?
It does. Yeah.
I think so. And if there was a piece in the session, so somewhere, maybe we were halfway through, I don't know, I wasn't looking at a clock, but this piece where I'm just tracking what's going on, and all of a sudden, my eyes pop open. Because typically, when we're receiving energetic work, we go inward, right? And all of a sudden, my eyes pop open, and the only thing that goes through my head is, it's all a lie.
Yep.
All a lie. And this wasn't about the outer reality, the 3D reality. I'm familiar with all that, what's going on and how it's going on. And it's really all an illusion. Or it didn't have to do with that. It had to do with me specifically. But we're not out of the session yet. So I just know that it's all a lie. So to go with being suppressed or not, am I making sense?
Yep. Well,
And
let's move into the second part of the session where we find out what was one of the biggest parts of the lie. So now we're going to revert back to the gentleman who she had, and I mean, I am not even exaggerating how much you truly believe that this was a soulmate and that you had multiple lives with him. And I got completely the opposite information in the session. And so now for me, as not only a friend, but a practitioner, it's very important for me to stay integral and say, okay, this is not Suzanne's has any spin on this at all, staying really clear in my messaging. But I heard 100% that this gentleman that comes and goes throughout Gisele's life was also a huge piece of the lie. And I was flabbergasted, to tell you the truth. And I didn't know what to think with that. So I went super deep into that. And literally, what I heard is he was a quote unquote handler. And so I want to go back now to the MK Ultra. A very large piece of MK Ultra is programmers and handlers. So programmers would have been part of her life had she not had the benevolent beings working with the organs and not being the top of the class. Let's just keep it that way. If I'm not the top of the class, I'm not going to get programmed into all of the other stuff and taken off the market and get, God sold into God knows what, right? So the programmers are the ones that are administering protocol, but a handler is somebody different. A handler is a person that is literally assigned to another person to control and direct them throughout their lives, and they are considered an asset. So you would have been considered the handler's asset, and that handler's job was to absolutely keep tabs on you throughout your life, especially when you are getting to the point where, wow, all of a sudden I'm coming into my spirituality and all my psychic gifts are coming forward again. And then boom, handler shows up and the personality gets shot down again. And then all the fear comes up and the organ goes crazy. And then we don't have any self-worth again. So this roller coaster ride with this person, which I now hear was a handler, when we started to talk about it, I remember your face was just like, because it wasn't ever thought of before. And I was almost terrified to say it because that's a big deal to find out someone who you believed with all of your heart and soul was a soulmate was truly instead a big fat lie and a handler and putting in false memory implant along the way with the programmers. And that was a really big deal. And I don't know, it's been what, 2 months for you? July, August, September? 2 months for you. And I don't know if that's resonating more and stronger or if that's still wonky or where you at with that whole, where you at with that little tidbit? Right?
Yeah, and I think that this is one of the things I love what you guys do and how you share the work with other people. But this one, I mean, to talk about a work in progress.
Right?
Uh, so how am I doing with that one? Um, I admittedly I have a hard time with the word handler.
Yeah.
And because I'm not saying that it is true or it's not true. It's either way. I'm trying to find the words because either way, and I don't want to go into like a victim type thing. It comes to a place of being used,
Oh, yeah.
whether it's the person being programmed or whether it's the handler. Because just as the person doesn't know, in this case, me, we're talking about me, just in how many decades later in my life, I'd like to think that the other person doesn't know either. And it's how nefarious this whole thing is and how the use, of people. But at the same time, at the same time, it's, where the most important thing to me, the only thing that matters really to me in life is the evolution of the soul. It's all that matters to me. It really truly does. So if this is how this soul chose to evolve for whatever experience in this life, then in this, okay, this is going to sound twisted, but I mean it from here, then I also have to be grateful for that person.
Hmm.
Okay. I don't, not in a twist. You get what I mean? That comes from the heart because yeah, it's a hard one, to sit with. The next day when I was, walking around smudging, well, I'm skipping ahead. Let's just keep to this. But it's honestly, it brings up compassion and empathy
Yeah.
for how humans are used. They're just used. And Yeah. Can we have compassion for ourselves? Can we have compassion for the other person who's using us?
Mhm.
The soul from this aspect go, oh yeah, sure, I haven't done that before. Yeah, that looks like a good scenario. Let's try that on. Let's see how many decades it takes me to figure that one out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's and I'm so grateful. And again, still working it out, still processing, you know? Yeah, what do you do with that person the next time that you see them?
Well, and Giselle's job is to also not just necessarily take, as Suzanne being a practitioner, 100% of what I say or get either. And it's up to the client to have full discernment. And so maybe, and then I'm going to pass it off to Kim because I know she's got a million questions because she doesn't know. I mean, she wasn't involved in all that big realizing the handler thing. Um, what happened in the body? Your body. What happened in the body when I expressed that information that I got? Not necessarily the very first, because it's stunning. You're stunned. It's like the rug gets pulled out and you're kind of like, what the heck, right? But as the days evolved or the weeks evolved, what happens in the body for more of a knowing or a not knowing? Is there something that you can share in terms of like what the inner knowing looks like, smells like, feels like, tastes like, sounds like, whatever?
With respect to having a handler or someone manipulating you?
All
Or
of it, like this is a lie and this is all changed and this is not, that's a big deal.
no, it is. And it's as the next day, I was incredibly sad because there's a piece here about um that Suzanne had picked up on that actually it was my dad who had just kind of signed off on it. But the devil is very wily. And I don't think that my dad knowingly, if this is true, I don't think he, knowingly it, and how you would get to my father is through ego and power. So my father would have, so he got moved up through the ranks through his career, right? He would have retired as a general. Not many people get to do that. He retired as a full bird colonel. Anyway, so first there's the sadness of, and then can you have compassion? Oh, I see how they could get to you. I see the lure, the hook will move you up the ranks, you know? And then I really thought the anger would come. Like I'd be really pissed off. And actually, I don't, it was more sadness of who would I be? Who would I be today if that hadn't happened? But as someone who does the work that we do, you can't just talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. And when this dumps in your life or comes up in your life, you didn't dump anything on me, sorry. When this comes up in your life, then I can't just believe for other people like this is what the soul chose to experience for whatever reason. I also have to believe that for myself. And the piece of me that said, I guess I wanted to see, hey, can I, from the other side, it's like, no problem. I got it. No problem. I'll figure it out. Right. And then we come down here and it's a totally different story. So I do believe that for whatever reason. And if it just helps one other person, or if it helps me to understand a bit better myself and how suppressed I've been, then, uh, what else are we here for?
Mhm. Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
No, it does, because you're right in that I think the most important piece of this as you're going through it is we are who we are because of what we go through and what we learn and what we grow from. That is, so who would you be?
And those illnesses, when you are Suzanne,
Mhm.
and or you know what it's like to be, ill as a child. So many of us. And what it elicited in me is deep compassion for people who are sick, who are ill, who don't have anybody there. It just because You know what it's like because you experienced it. So y- there's always gifts, always gifts and beautiful teachings to be had if we can get out of, I don't know, can I swear on a pod? Maybe not. Let me use
Me
different
too.
words.
You can.
So if we can just get out of if we can just get out of our way, and kind of rise above those lower emotions and be like, hey, okay, what am I really seeking to learn or experience here?
Mhm.
And does that make me a better person? And therefore, when then somebody else comes to you, and you can go, yeah, I know what that's like.
Mhm.
I know what that's like.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
going to
I think
circle back for 1 second. Sorry, Kim. I'm going to circle back before we lose this. I also want to say I love that you have compassion for the handler. That's awesome. That's beautiful. However, also the 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 tactical side of how these programs work are fascinating to me, and I really want people to hear this if they choose to, in that the handler's personality is similar to dad's. Remember that. And dad is part of the process already, as was an uncle, if I believe, right? Wasn't there also an uncle for you? Oh, maybe
Not that
that's
I know of yet.
oh, maybe that's another client. I've got a couple of these going right now. There's another one that had found out an uncle was really high in the MK Ultra stuff. Anyway, but if my dad's personality and this handler's personality traits are the same, this is why they pick that handler. This is why they align you as the asset. This is why that person will raise in the ranks themselves also, not just the dad, but the person raises in the ranks because of the ego. And so these are all things that we want to be aware of right now because when we're doing spiritual work, the whole goal is to find the divine ego, not the egoic ego. And the handler is really being spoon fed the egoic ego. And this is confusing because it is matching dad so much that every time that person comes into your life, your head goes backwards and your self-worth goes right down the toilet because you're going back to 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 12 and 14 and 18 instead of being an adult woman. And so I really think it's important to understand as listeners, this limits our our gifts. I mean, this your gifts are ridiculously powerful and strong, and the ownership of those gifts has never been to the level that is deserved, not only by you, but by everyone that receives them because of this process. And I think that that just basically sucks. And I don't, so I get empathy and compassion and all those wonderful things that you talk about, but I think it also sucks that we go through this stuff to go, no. So the literal silver lining on that is that you're courageous enough to allow it to come out in a session because I can't pull anything out of you unless you let it, right? I mean, I'm not magically pulling something out. And your higher self is ready. And so the compassion goes for you too. This is about you. It's time. I'm not putting up with this anymore. It's just not going to happen anymore. So there's, like you said, there's beauty everywhere, but there's also some really shitty stuff.
well,
Yeah. No, agreed.
can we tap back into I'm so curious about the handler piece of this because you had said, Gisele, that you don't know if he knew or not if he was a handler, right? We don't know. Like, so he could be totally manipulated in a way that he doesn't even know he's a handler, right? Like, this doesn't
Yes.
mean that he went through a program consciously and decided to be a handler, but that he was manipulated somewhere along the line to be there when he needed to be there to be your handler. Is
Yeah,
that?
I mean that's my understanding. I mean they don't know just as much as you don't know. And I could be wrong about that. I
Yeah.
for sure could be wrong about that. But from and maybe I just want to think that way. But I don't know, Kim. Like I said, we're literally in real time trying to unpack this.
Yep.
So, you know, I don't know. I don't know.
It just makes me so create the part that is so, you're getting your head around is like we're just like pieces, like we're just like chess pieces on a board,
Yep.
that they're manipulating us to do and
Yep.
make the moves for us.
Yep.
Where if we didn't like we didn't have that, not knowing that we have it, but we didn't, then like you're right, Suzanne, our spiritual journey would be so different
Mhm.
because we wouldn't be limiting ourselves, and like I know we limit ourselves in these things, but also they're limiting us from what
Right.
we're capable of. I don't,
Yeah.
it's just mind blowing. I'm sorry. It's just crazy to me that this has been going on for so long.
Can I add one more thing?
Mhm.
Like, somebody recently came in, um, and they are very much connected with, they've recently come into my sphere, let's say, which I find interesting at this time. And this individual, from what I is definitely related to government programs, military programs, naval intelligence, just because of information that's dropped, let's say. And he said what came out of his mouth the other day, just talking about things that he talks. He's very galactic. He's very cosmic. And his own program that he was born into. Now, from what I know of this gentleman, he doesn't look at it in any nefarious way. That it's so interesting. Um, but he made a comment within the last, I don't know, couple of weeks, and about what you're saying, Kim, about, and he's like, well, we're all watched
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
day that we're born.
Ugh.
And I found it so fascinating. Why
I
does it
Yeah.
come
just
into,
don't think
why,
that's really happening. And
why
now,
has,
especially with technology, it makes, I
but
mean,
he didn't necessarily mean it like that.
yeah.
Because yes, for sure, we're all watched constantly, but he was like, well, we're all watched from the moment we're born.
Right. To some extent, from somewhere, from somehow. Yeah, I mean, I totally get that. I do really want to throw out some ideas on how this can happen, though, because even if the handler doesn't know, they are still being programmed as well. They can be programmed with sound, they can be programmed with dream state, they can be programmed with, all kinds of things. They can be taken and returned for a weekend and they don't even know it. I mean, there's so many things that we're not aware of. And so, yes, they know, but no, they don't know is kind of the case. However, it's important for us to understand the ego of that person was also messy enough to be able to fall for it. The goal, hopefully, for your spiritual journey in the healing sessions is to get through the vulnerable ego that is still stuck in the organ of the kidney from 2 years old, right? I mean, this is where we get out of the fear, get out of the fear. And it's fear that's leading the handler to feeling like they're getting somewhere. Oh my God, you're giving me all these opportunities. This is great. Now I've got more money or I've got more exposure or I'm this really big, powerful healer myself. I mean, there's a lot of ego in that being. And that has always overshadowed your gifts. And that's part of the mechanics of this. So the handlers are very specific to what's getting shut down in you. So it's built up in them to shut down in you. It's a very well-oiled machine. Let's just put it that way. And so everyone, in my opinion, is self-responsible to figure out how to get the fear programming out. And let's not forget there's other implants that can be put in you, which I also found was an implant in you, an energetic implant, doesn't mean you have a big piece of metal in you, an energetic mind implant that can come in any way, shape, or form. It can come in a chemtrail, it can come in a dream space, it can come in something, whatever. These are in your head to say, I'm not, especially for your shamanic indigenous work, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, and has limited you from the get go. And yet you are in concert with these beings that are handling that are way good. And they're not, they're no good, they're not good any better. There isn't a better, it isn't a value, but it's a squashing, squashing, squashing. And that's how the mechanics work. So these are creepy things that have happened for eons and eons, and they're getting quicker and faster because of technology and they're not going anywhere. Our AI is not going anywhere. It's getting stronger, but people are getting more and more ignorant to to think that this is great without double guessing. And I think that's why this was an important story. Put it out there and double guess everything. Use your body as the barometer. My body says, ah, or my body goes, you know, these are the reasons we do these podcasts and I do energy work is to bring the body forward in coding and light codes and activate the body so that you are the truth teller, not somebody outside of yourself.
Yeah. And something that I kind of forgot, I forgot that you found that implant, actually. That's why I'm like listening to you going, huh, wow, that's interesting. But which brings up with the mind wipe.
Mhm. Oh, which is part of the whole MK Ultra thing is mind wipe is huge because the whole process of it is memory loss. And what happens to these people, and it is coming in droves right now. I have my Vibe Tribe membership, and we just talked last month about really scary stuff. There's so many MK Ultra survivors coming forward because they're in their 50s now and their 60s now. And the actual programming is wearing off. The mind wipe is wearing off. The mind memory loss is starting to change in them. And the depression is starting to go, this isn't depression because I'm depressed. This is depression because something's peeling off of me that I've been carrying on my field for all of these years. And they're finding long-term cognitive issues are really part of this programming process. And now when they're coming through, remembering their cognitive is coming back, hence their memory is coming back. So this is a process that we're moving through right now. And it's important for us to realize this is real. And it can't stay for what the cool part is it's not staying forever. The cool part is it's only lasting, they're taking these people as kids, like you would have been taken at 5, right? And it would have gone all the way up into your 50s. But now in the 50s and 60s, the bodies are actually self-healing and coming back with cognitive memory. It's astounding to me.
How does
And
it fit though? Like your soul, higher self, like do you like we that specific to implants, do you have to be ready? Like is your soul, your higher self protecting you from those until you can actually be in a place to do something with it before you know that they're there? Like
do you want
how
me to
does that
take that,
happen?
Giselle, or you?
Say
G?
again,
Do
say again,
you want to
Suzanne.
answer that, or do you want me to answer that?
Well, or I think, we both can. I think what, like Suzanne said, it can only come to the surface when the person is ready for this to surface. And if this information came up, say, 10 years ago, and I wasn't ready for that, God knows what it would have done to my psyche. My consciousness perhaps would not have been I'd like to think that there's been some consciousness growth while I've been here.
Yep.
So, that it can really screw with the psyche. So I'd like to think that there's a internal preservation mechanism that only a lot, if done in a good way, a proper way, an integral way, which can be a problem with plant medicine and psychedelics. I don't have a problem with them at all, but you blow through fields and timelines when you're not prepared. That's another subject, but so it can only, I was ready to receive the information. It was ready to come to the surface.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it broke my psyche. I'm still just in a process. And Suzanne?
Yeah, and I can add on and dovetail in a little bit of different way, Kim, in that all implants and or hijacks aren't necessarily a soul contract. I mean, I can be on a soul contract for awakening and I can get jacked by something that is really nefarious. And it doesn't necessarily mean I contracted to get jacked on a nefarious implant, right?
Yeah.
But what it does do is it gives me the timing. We'll go back to what Giselle just said. It gives me the timing for me as an inner growth to go, okay, I'm going to process this. I got jacked on this nefarious implant in 2017, but I can't really get my head around it and have it unearthed in a healing session until 2026, right? Or
Mhm.
5. So it works together, but it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing, if you're following what I'm saying. The
Right.
implant itself, the hijack, the whatever, doesn't necessarily mean I signed up from that for the beginning, but it does have a piece in the action of me opening like the lotus flower at a certain time. Additionally, the lotus flower also opens even bigger the cogs in the wheel of timelines, solar flares, Schumann resonance, frequencies, awakening, everything. So we need to remember if we're looking at these things that this is a holographic macro micro relationship. And so these hijacks will affect the individual, but they also affect the macro. and the macros affecting the individual. So this is a really big web of stuff. It's not as easy as it sounds, but hopefully we're getting
Oh,
the message across.
because quite frankly, I wasn't thinking that a soul contract you would even come in wanting an implant. Like
No,
for you to say that, like I'm like,
right.
right, like
You wouldn't sign up like I'm going to get an implant in 2017, but what you're
yeah,
signing up for is I'm going to wake up and have a really big evolution and a remembering in 2025 because the 17 had me not experiencing until I was ready.
okay.
Do you see what I'm saying? So it is still a help, even though it's a hindrance. It's so difficult when we're talking really big quantum energy fields because it always is a this and a that, not a this or a that. And it gets very hard for people to decipher what the heck we're talking about sometimes. So I'm doing my best, hopefully, to make quantum work sound simple,
It
even though
is
it's not.
not simple.
Yeah,
No, that makes sense.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I don't know.
So we've been going quite a while, Giselle. You're hanging in there. I appreciate your honesty and your humility. Let's just kind of round down with, like we said, it's been 2 months. We are talking consistently, you and I, as friends and healers together, and know we're moving forward with some things together. Where do you feel like this is taking you to kind of like summarize it at this point in your life slash career? And why this trajectory feels good or still very confusing at this particular time and moving forward. Maybe you can kind of land the plane with that.
Oh God. I don't know if I can I don't know if I can land the plane without
Well, don't
crashing.
land. Maybe you can just kind of swoosh.
Yeah, I mean it's not the best I can say is I'm doing my best to remain balanced with it.
Good.
To to not make it be um a big story.
Yes.
It's because we can get very attached to our stories or very attached to something that happened to us, and for anyone who's been out in Sedona, it's sort of the land of labels or attachments, literally and figuratively. So it's really just keeping a healthy balance is the best that I can say, and really just sitting with it, not allowing it to overtake in any way, and um, just being with it. And we have another session in October, and we'll see what comes up then. There
Hmm.
was also something about, and just because we are unpacking this, something about the memories and the mind wipe. Suzanne had basically, one of the things was she's like, they've been mind wiping you your whole life. And basically they only kind of stopped that about 5 years ago when I started, if I'm remembering correctly. And so part of the session was bringing the memories that were wiped back, that knowledge, that wisdom, those experiences, that ancestry, that DNA, for lack of another word. So kind of, I haven't really been doing anything with that, but kind of been waiting and seeing, in all honesty,
Hmm.
because I'm here to be honest, right? So I'm just kind of sitting with it, I guess I'd say, and really truly not being that, oh, I'm a victim. I'm one of those. To put me in a pot, to put me in. No, does that make sense?
I think that's beautiful. And I'm finding the really healthy people on the other podcasts that are really pushing the NK Ultra survivors. The healthy ones are saying the same thing. There isn't a victimization here, and I am no longer holding a story. And every person walking this planet holds stories. I don't care what that story is, My mom died when I was 8, or my dad lost his job, or what, we all have these stories that we hang on to. And I write about that in the Empath book that I wrote. The Confident Empath book talks extremely about get rid of your story because that can really limit you. And I think this has been a really great opportunity for you to blow the house off the story. And I think you're doing great. So,
Well, thank you for providing a safe space for that.
yeah.
Because, and I think that's the the biggest thing, right? Anyone who does any type of, energetic work, if you provide the safety, if you provide the container, then it allows people to be able to do their, work, whatever that may be for them. So thank you so much for being so, integrity is everything for me. Thank you both. I love you both so much.
Thank you for being here. This was great. I really appreciate it. Kimmy, any last words?
I am just so proud of you for everything you're doing and that you would do this for other people to learn from because there's just so much out there. And, just having a few people totally identify to this and, understand how you're dealing with it in a way that maybe it'll help them figure out, how they deal with what they've got going on. And so you're just a beautiful soul. And I love you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'm a reflection of you both. So
Before I leave this, I want to ask you, do you care to give anyone a website on the crystal bed business or anything in that regard? Or do you want us to put something in the description or how do you feel there?
you can put a link in the description.
Okay.
It's, crystallizerbed.net.
Perfect. All right, my dear. I love you to pieces. Thank you for coming. We both appreciate your time and your message, and hopefully we'll see you soon. And on behalf of Kim and I, thank you very much. Maybe this is your chance to really leave a great comment. Ask a question. We are here for you. We're expanding our platform. We're thrilled about it. Hit subscribe, hit share, and please, please talk to people that you know that this would help them out because this was a great story. We love you. Till next, Cosmic Hugs.
Goodbye.